Yo guys, welcome back to another video. Today, as you guys can see, we're doing a little bit of a change of scenery. We're outside today because my bedroom has been unusually dark. My TV is currently broken, so I'm not able to get the light that I usually have. Also, my ceiling light is kind of dark right now, so it's probably dying. Anyways, just figured it would be best to do a little review outside, so excuse any background noises. We do have some wind chimes and stuff, so hopefully they're not blowing like crazy. But anyways, as you guys can see by the title of today's video, we're going to be talking about the comic East of West by Jonathan Hickman and Nick Dragotta. Yeah, this was just absurdly fantastic. I have this huge compendium here that I did get, I believe, at the end of March or the beginning of April. I don't quite remember. But I didn't get a whole lot of reading done in the month of April, just because, well, I mean, I got a good amount of reading done, but outside of East of West, because it is such a massive book. That's sort of the series that captured all of my time. I was just trying to get it finished and not read anything else at the time. So during the month of April, that's pretty much all I read, which is why there isn't going to be an April video for the comics that I read during April. There will definitely be one for May this month, but yeah, not for April, because it really just consisted of East of West. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about all of the things that I liked and didn't like. There isn't much I didn't like about this. Yeah, I'm going to try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible and just vaguely talk about aspects of it that I like rather than anything very specific, so that if you haven't read it, you can go into it and not really be spoiled a whole lot. But yeah, I'm starting to realize that my book is a little damaged. It looked like it got bent a little bit. That sucks. Anyway, besides the point, I hope you all enjoy the video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you go on to enjoy the video, I would greatly appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get into it. So, as I get started here, I'm just going to give you guys a vague idea of what East of West is. Pretty much it's about the four horsemen of the apocalypse. You've got, of course, death, war, famine, and conquest. The four horsemen ripped straight from biblical text, the bringers of the apocalypse. But it's done in a really cool way where they are not knights of the apocalypse or anything like that. They're like cowboys. This East of West is a western, essentially, but it's like a sci-fi fantasy western that takes place in America in this alternate timeline where the Civil War didn't exactly end in like a victory from the North, from the Union. It ended in a stalemate and truce, so the country is divided between the Confederacy and the Union, but there's also a large portion of land that belongs to the natives called the Endless Nation. You have the Republic of Texas, which is its own nation, and then you have basically the West Coast, which is, I forget exactly what it's called. It's like a New China or something, which of course all of the Chinese immigrants in the West sort of take over, and like San Francisco is like probably where I'd say they're headquartered at. I don't know if it's ever explicitly said, but it just makes sense that it would be San Fran. But anyway, the U.S. is sort of divided in all of these territories. It kind of reminds me of, if you've ever read Old Man Logan, the Wolverine comic by Mark Miller, just sort of how they're all divided by, territories, and you've got these supervillains that sort of rule over them. But anyway, that's sort of what's happening here. The Horseman of Death, however, kind of goes rogue against his brothers. He gets betrayed. And the thing about these four horsemen is that they're really inevitable. So anytime they get killed, they're reborn into like the bodies of children. And so anyways, Death, he gets betrayed by his siblings, and we later find out exactly why and how all that went down. But he kills his siblings, and so they're reborn as children. So part of the story is us following the three horsemen trying to hunt down Death. And Death is pretty much the main character. I wouldn't say there's exactly a main character, because it's like Game of Thrones in the sense that there's, it's a sprawling world and we follow characters. It's multi-point of view. For any of my prose readers out there that read novels, it's like Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire, or even the later Red Rising books, where it's, just multi-POV all over the place. So there isn't exactly a main character, but I would say Death is kind of the main character, the main focus. And so since he wasn't killed, he sort of maintains his adult body while the others are reborn as children. And he's sort of a wanderer across this desolate U.S., and the horses that he rides, there's like these weird robot animals that are super sick. It's very reminiscent of like Horizon Zero Dawn, if you've ever played that, with like the robot animals and robot dinosaur type stuff. It reminds me of that a lot. But yeah, that's sort of what's going on here. There's these people called the Chosen, who are the leaders of these different territories, and they all have to work together. There's like this prophecy element, biblical prophecy kind of deal, where they have to work together to bring about the apocalypse. But they have to basically keep their nations in check and keep it a secret what they're trying to do. But it's all about trying to orchestrate the apocalypse. And what we later find out is that Death has a son who is believed to be in the prophecy, the beast. Basically, like, I don't know, I'd have to brush up on my knowledge of the Book of Revelations, but basically be the Antichrist, essentially, just the weapon of mass destruction to bring about the apocalypse. I guess not exactly the Antichrist, but the beast. Letting, if you want to bring pagan mythology into it, like letting Fenrir free, bringing about the apocalypse. And so, yeah, the main character Death is trying to track down his son and rescue him, so that he's not indoctrinated into becoming, fulfilling that self-destructive prophecy. It's super violent, and it's really fun. This is my first ever Hickman book that I read. That's actually not true. Now that I'm thinking about it, I read Ultimate Spider-Man, and I've read the trades for that recently. But other than the Ultimate Spider-Man, this is the only other Hickman thing I've read. And so I wasn't really used to it. Some of the stuff can be a little convoluted and maybe confusing at times, which apparently is a very Hickman thing. I didn't know that. And it kind of reminds me of Grant Morrison in a little bit, like in a bit of ways. I haven't read a whole lot of Grant Morrison, but my experience with Grant Morrison through New X-Men, for example, there's just things that are left vague and just kind of weird, and that's very much like East of West, and to me it's fitting. And especially when you look at some of the inspirations for East of West, I know, at least in the art, Nick Dragotta, it was inspired by Tsutomu Nihei, which, if you guys have been watching me for a long time, is a favorite creator of mine. He's a mangaka, famous for creating series like Blame and Obara, Knights of Sidonia, that kind of stuff, where it's very much a show don't tell kind of story, where it's mainly focused on the art and the atmosphere and the creatures, and there's less emphasis on the story, and it's very much like almost like a FromSoft game in that sense, like your Bloodborns, your Elden Rings, your Dark Souls, where a lot of the story is left in the subtext, and it's more about the atmosphere and whatnot. And knowing that inspiration, it makes a lot of sense. For East of West, you get a lot of that sort of cyberpunk-esque, like mega structures and stuff like that. And of course, there's like, I don't know, it's just a really cool blend of genre between it being a Western. You have some cyberpunk elements, some fantasy elements with like the prophecy, and even some biblical elements, of course, having to do with the apocalypse and the Four Horsemen. They're just blending all of these different things that are some of my favorite aspects in any stories. I'm a big cyberpunk guy. I love cyberpunk. I also really dig westerns and revenge stories. So it's very much like a Clint Eastwood, wanderer kind of character in Death, with like cyberpunk. And then of course, being the Four Horsemen, you're wrapping in, like I said, biblical elements and different mythologies and all that. It's just a really awesome blend of ideas. Yeah, it's just super sick. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, there's parts of it that are kind of convoluted and I didn't quite get, but I just kind of, after rereading it a couple of times, like a sentence or whatever, and if I still didn't get it, I was like, whatever, and I just continued reading it. I didn't really, put much thought into it. I was like, okay, it's probably just going to be confusing to be confusing. It's whatever. And I just kept reading it, and it ended up being one of my favorite comics I've ever read, honestly. I'd say it's probably my second favorite comic I've read since I've gotten into the comics. My first favorite, of course, being Invincible, just amazing, but this is like right behind it. Yeah, if you guys haven't read East of West, I highly recommend it. It's fantastic, especially if you're into any of the stuff that I talked about before. Yeah, you're gonna love it. If you're a fan of Fallout, if you're a fan of cyberpunk, if you're a fan of, I don't know, just westerns in general, I guess, or I don't know, if you're into cool shit, then you're gonna like this. I'll just say that. Yeah, there's just a huge cast of characters. The art is fantastic. The scenery is fantastic. It's bizarre and gory and violent. There's some awesome fights. One of my favorite parts of this story, being a Texan, there's a large emphasis on Texas, which I like. It's pretty cool. But there's these like almost like RoboCop kind of characters, or like RoboCop or like Judge Dredd. Basically the Texas Rangers, which if you guys, I'm not going to go into it too much, but if you guys aren't familiar with what the Texas Rangers are, definitely go look into it. It's pretty cool, and it's kind of a old historical element of Texas history that I enjoy. It's pretty cool. Basically kind of like a Texas-based, I wouldn't say exactly a militia, but like a law enforcement militia kind of, I don't know. You kind of, it's hard to explain. You'd have to go look into it to know what I'm talking about. But the Texas Rangers play a part in this story, and they're kind of like bounty hunters in this story. Not exactly. But yeah, the one ranger that we do follow, he is really cool, and it very much reminds me of Judge Dredd or a RoboCop. But just like a Texas Ranger, so he's got like cowboy pistols and shit, like, and he's got this robot dog that follows him around. Yeah, it's super sick. I highly recommend East of West. Yeah, that's basically all I have to say. It's just fantastic. I think Jonathan Hickman did an excellent job writing this. Even though some of it was confusing, it was still very enjoyable. The dialogue was insane. The characters are awesome. But I do think the real highlight here in East of West is Nick Dragotta's art. It is just absurdly good, and there's some awesome panels throughout this entire series, and especially just like off rip. Like the first few issues, you get a good feel for the series, and that those first couple issues that showcase Death kind of going around murking fools. Yeah, busting into saloons, blowing people's heads off, yeah, it's awesome. Anyways, guys, that's about all I have for you today. I just wanted to give you guys my quick thoughts about east of west, and definitely get you guys to go check it out. Go support more independent comics. I've just been having so much fun with reading indie books lately, especially out of Image Comics. I really think they're probably the best publisher around in 2025. You know, DC, surprisingly, I just haven't been really into DC. I like Marvel characters quite a bit. It's just, I feel like I haven't read in, like, out of like recent years, the most quality stories. I just think independent work is absolutely fantastic, and especially consistently in the modern day comes out with some of the most inventive and interesting and compelling stories around. And East of West is a prime example of that, so I do highly recommend you guys go check it out. But yeah, guys, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.